Good morning and welcome to Election Day 2024 here. Well, not just on Frankly Speaking, everywhere. Welcome. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So glad that you've joined us this morning. It goes without saying, if you have not voted, the polls are open in New York from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Our friends in Pennsylvania, the polls close at 8 p.m. But here in New York, it is kicked off right now on Election Day here at 6 o'clock, and it will close at 9 o'clock tonight. We've got some comments from after yesterday's program we're going to get to. Then we're going to take a look at Donald Trump receiving some last-minute endorsements. Kamala Harris, some parts about her campaign in their closing message. She was out knocking on doors. She went to a couple, I think, small diners type scenario, and then gave a few rallies with celebrities involved, playing music, performing. We'll be talking about that. We've also got just some all-around general updates as you get ready for Election Day and the coverage that we'll be following tomorrow. Yes, this is the show where we'll be covering as much as we possibly can. But right now, we're going to take a look as we near the finish line, what is happening these last few hours. First off, how will Harris bring together America when she can't even bring together 90% of her staff who quit when she became the VP because she couldn't get along? That's a fair question. That was a number, and this was from a viewer right at the end of the program yesterday. So we didn't have a chance to mention it on the show. That is a question that's come up. She did definitely have some staffing issues. Near 90% had quit. But then they started saying, well, see, now she's unleashed. She doesn't have that dead weight around her anymore. So that's why she's been able to skyrocket in their mind. But also continuing with that message, more importantly, how will she ever get along with foreign countries? Fair question. Well, also to the person who sent in the clip. Yes, I have seen the clip of Governor Hochul. We mentioned it on last week's show where she said something to the extent of, if you vote for Republican, you're anti-American, anti-woman. Governor Hochul's trying desperately to stay relevant at the national scene. When we talk about the Democrats, you know, she got an opportunity to speak, did not do a very good job, but spoke at the DNC. She wants to be at that level of a, you know, kind of a kingmaker, power broker. She is not there. Nancy Pelosi calling her out specifically for the losses by Democrats, which led to the Republicans taking the House in the midterms. So she is trying to save face, and I guess that's how she thinks the message should come, that if you vote Republican, you're anti-American and anti-women. I think, again, showing that she's not ready for prime time when it comes to politicking, so to speak. Next up, a comment from a different viewer. Good morning. Well, hey, good morning. What's the scoop on the bridge on Washington Ave? More crying over the squirrel than the important issues? I don't know. I've not heard, but if any viewers have heard what all the hullabaloo was about, I'm not sure. I did not see it. But speaking of the squirrel, I'm sure you didn't want me to segue with that. Just a quick update. Peanut has his owners have a GoFundMe page called Call for Justice for Peanut the Squirrel and New York State DEC Reform. It has raised, I checked it this morning from an update from the New York Post, $194,000. Yes, $194,000. Now, there's an assemblyman from Long Island, of all places, which has proposed an amendment to a New York State environmental conservation law aimed at reforming animal seizure protocols following the euthanization of Peanut the squirrel. Assemblyman Jake Bloomkranz of the 15th Assembly District in Long Island announced on Saturday, boy, he jumped right on this, a proposal for an amendment called Peanut's Law, Humane Animal Protection Act. This proposed law would amend, well, you don't need to know all that, but what it would basically do is have a 72-hour waiting period, a mandatory minimum 72-hour pause before euthanizing any sanctuary animal, giving sanctuary operators time to respond, arrange veterinary care, and appeal. Emergency appeal rights. A dedicated DEC review board of experts will evaluate appeals within 48 hours, ensuring each case receives immediate attention. A clear immediate risk criteria. Euthanization can only bypass a waiting period if a licensed veterinarian confirms a direct immediate risk to public safety. Transparent reporting. The DEC would be required to publish quarterly reports on animal seizures and release testing results within 7 days if euthanization occurs. And sanctuary recognition. Peanuts law defines animal sanctuaries as registered tax-identified entities upholding their rights. Assemblyman Blumenkranz addressed in a letter to Governor Hochul that there needs to be accountability in Peanuts' case and for an investigation to be conducted. Okay, just wanted to mention that quickly as an update. I know everybody's talking about it. I did not plan on talking about it, but when I saw $194,000, wow. So last night, early this morning, the big news, Trump and Harris split those 6 votes in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, as Election Day kicks off. So it kicked off with a tie, which could, however you want to read into that, however you want to address that. The Republican ex-president and the Democrat vice president nabbed 3 votes each in the hamlet of Dixville Notch, which has been carrying on the midnight voting custom since 1960. The final vote tally at Dixville Notch is a dramatic shift from the 2020 election. Keep that in mind, when Joe Biden swept the town's votes, winning all 5 votes before taking the state by a 7% margin. Hillary Clinton also won the Dixville Notch vote in the 2016 presidential election. So however you want to read the tea leaves on this, we're going to have some other predictions that people are making later on in the program. But Tuesday's results out of Dixville Notch align with national polls that have shown Trump and Harris locked in a tight race. The final poll commissioned by the Post ahead of Election Day found that the two presidential candidates are in a virtual tie, with both receiving 49% support among likely voters. On Sunday, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance predicted a Trump victory in the Granite State, telling voters during a rally in Derry that the campaign is expanding the map. I believe that in 2 days we're going to turn New Hampshire red and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States, he said. Now, the last presidential candidate to win New Hampshire was, Republican that is, was George W. Bush back in 2000, who went on to defeat Al Gore to take the White House. Dixville Notch's voting tradition is possibly due to the state's electoral laws that allow municipalities with less than 100 people to open polls at midnight and close when all registered voters cast their ballots. Polling stations in most states across the country open at 6 or 7 a.m. on Election Day. So Trump outperformed is one way to look at that, because it was a tie. Only 8 voters turned out for the traditional early voting. Almost as many reporters were on hand to record it. It has become a kind of a weird tradition. It doesn't really mean much in the scheme of things, but Trump outperforming his 2016 and 2020 results in Dixville Notch. Now, 79,270,157 mail-in and early person votes cast nationally. That's a good number. We're going to take a look at what that means. Probably a more important number is how much was spent on advertisement trying to convince you to vote for a candidate. We're going to tell you that number here in just a moment. But 79.2 million people voting early or mail-in. Are you going today? Did you wait? And today is the big day between 6 and 9 p.m. I'd love to hear how it went. I'd love to hear how you're feeling this morning on Election Day 2024. Your thoughts on the way the race will shape up. When do you think we'll actually know who the next president of the United States is? When do you think we'll start getting real results in? But most importantly, how are you feeling on this election morning 2024? We are going to talk about, it was interesting, a lot of last minute endorsements for Trump coming in. Some interesting ones. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to take a look at Harris's campaign. There's a couple of media updates that are kind of interesting. Semaphore got an internal memo from the New York Times, and it was basically an off-the-records meeting with New York Times staff, and they were having a conversation about, were they not political enough? Did they not do enough to attack Trump? Why didn't his age come up before and things like that? We're going to maybe, if we have an opportunity, take a look at that, just because it's interesting in today's culture how the media is operating. You see the bias. They tried to continue the momentum going as soon as Harris was given, I guess how would you say, the nominee that was given the position to run. They went into full defense mode and protection mode of her. I guess she did an interview with an influencer the other day that went so poorly the guy doesn't even want to play it. Just interesting. It's interesting how this race is all shaped up, and going into today, Election Day, where it's all over but the shouting. Yeah, maybe. We're going to find out what some people are saying about it, but most importantly, I want to know your thoughts this morning. But we got to take our first break. We're just getting warmed up on Election Day, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
I'm Marianne Quirk. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Hi, I'm Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of comments coming in. Thanks, Frank. Local news had nothing. Yes, that was in reference to Governor Hochul saying that if you vote Republican, you're anti-American, anti-women. We talked about it. I believe we've had so many guests, but I believe we ended up talking to former Congressman Joe Sempolinski about it. And I think it came up a little bit with, who was it? Mike Sapricone, who's running for United States Senator against Gillibrand. So absolutely, I'm glad to report on it. Ken writes, when will the 2024 election results be known? 2008, we knew the results on Election Day. 2012, we knew the results on Election Day, and about 2.5 million less people voted than in 2008. 2016, we knew the results the morning after Election Day. About 7.7 million more people voted than in 2012. 2020, all indicators on Election Day were pointing towards Trump winning, but with after Election Day ballot counting, the legacy media called it for Biden 4 days after Election Day. The official results were announced weeks later. Due to extended mail-in ballot deadlines, about 22 million more people voted than in 2016. 2024, here we are. We are already being told that we won't see the results on Election Day, and it could be weeks before we know. I think we will be told that 15 to 20 million more people will have voted this year than in 2020. Could it be that the Democrats need to see how many people vote for Trump to know how many votes they need to find for Harris? Reportedly, France went back to paper ballots and hand counting to eliminate fraud. Well, I know NBC said, Nevada won't be known for days. We'll talk about that in a moment. I know, though, early voting is down. Not by much, but we'll talk about those numbers in a second. So many people commenting this morning. I love it. Keep them coming in. A projected $15.9 billion has been spent in the presidential and congressional campaigns that you can vote for today. Did you hear me? $15.9 billion. By comparison, the 2020 campaigns raised $15.1 billion, and the 2016 ones $16.5 billion, not inflation adjusted. More than 11,000 PACs and other political groups helped fund this election's record spending. Nearly 2/3 of the donations came from just 100 groups that got boatloads of money from billionaires. Over 400 Americans donated at least $1 million, which is up from 23 people in the 2004 elections. This year, high earners swayed both ways, but more veered left. Now, this is why I've talked about on this program numerous times. I don't think big money has ever played such an important role in a presidential election, because really it was big money that helped boot Biden off the ballot and give it to Kamala Harris. Between their campaigns, Harris raised $1.6 billion with help from deep-pocketed donors like Michael Bloomberg, Bill Gates, Melinda French Gates, Lauren Powell Jobs, Reed Hastings, and Dustin Markowitz. Why not mention Soros? That's interesting. Trump raised $1.1 billion, with 1/5 of the pile coming from Elon Musk and Timothy Mellon, a banking heir who was this election's largest individual donor. So for perspective, but it's different, obviously. Campaigns for Canada's last federal election in 2021 cost just $69 million, inflation adjusted. But $15.9 billion dumped into the presidential and congressional campaigns on today's ballot. There's an important number, but we talked about 78 million, a little more, about 79.2 actually, million ballots have been cast early this year. Early voting turnout is down from 2020 levels, which makes sense when you think 2020 is still in the thick of COVID. Across the country, far fewer voters chose to vote ahead of Election Day this year compared with the pandemic-era 2020 election. 4 years ago, more than 110 million Americans voted early in person or by mail, roughly 70% of everyone who voted in the election. So we don't know the final numbers, but the numbers being reported was 79.2 million in early in-person or mail-in ballots. Republicans have grown their pre-election vote share. Republicans have made up more of the pre-election vote than they did in 2020. The Trump campaign made more of an effort this year to encourage Republicans to vote early and by mail, which is a major message change from 2020. Across the 27 states for which they looked at data, this is CNN, registered Democrats have cast 37% of pre-election ballots, while registered Republicans have cast 35%. That's a significant tightening in the partisan gap since 2020 when it was 42-30. I don't want to get into all the specifics. I know reading numbers gets a little wonky, so I apologize, but it's something to note that you're seeing increased number in Republicans early voting. There is a wide gender gap that remains, but slightly narrow from 2020. Overall, roughly 1.8 million more women than men have voted early in some of the swing states. So there's your kind of your quick overview on early voting. Are you going? Well, did you early vote, or are you going today? What are your thoughts? How do you feel this morning? But to what Ken was saying, NBC News warned that Americans would face a delay in the presidential election results as, quote, Nevada will take a week to count all their votes. So she wins North Carolina, and we could be living here in Nevada waiting and waiting and waiting, said Chuck Todd. And if you remember, Nevada will take a week to count all their votes, and that more ballots would come in. This is going to be lawyers upon lawyers litigating which ballots can get fixed or cured, is the language you'll start to see, those provisional ballots. Now, President Biden ended up winning Nevada in 2020, receiving 50.1%, while former President Trump received 47.7%. What are your thoughts about this kind of protest vote from the Democrat side? Either not voting or voting for Jill Stein. And there's a couple of reasons for the protest. One, well, you've seen it during Harris's rally. There's been some type of interruption in nearly every rally, and it's normally in regards to Israel and Hamas. So do you think that plays a major factor? Now we won't know of the people that just don't go and vote unless they go in and kind of what they were doing in the primary and just, put nobody down and vote for everything else. There's that. Or if they don't vote, we'll never really know what that number is of a protest. But if Jill Stein does well, we know that would be kind of the protest vote. I don't have any clue. I don't know if anybody does, how much of that protest vote. It's really one of the reasons why Kamala Harris had to walk on eggshells in so many instances. Some speculating it's why she didn't pick Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, because of her fears of the kind of anti-Israel vote. Now, as Van Jones says it now, and I always mention this because I think it's worth mentioning, Van Jones saying that there is a marbling of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. And Alan Dershowitz actually had something to say about that. Am I running late? No. He was on the program The Record. Alan Dershowitz, Harvard law professor, you know who I'm talking about. He said, well, Harris is basically saying there are fine people on both sides of what happened on October 7th. She has praised some of the protesters who have called Israel's response genocide. It's like saying there are fine people on the side of 9/11. No, there aren't. There are terrorists and there are democracies. And she has to give the same message in Michigan as she does in Pennsylvania. And she risks losing everybody on the ground that she's a hypocrite. And she has given messages out of all sides of her mouth on so many issues. But on this issue, it is so important. And she doesn't have the courage to stand up. And Walz has been much worse. He has pandered to the protesters in ways that are completely unacceptable. And that is something that the media has kind of glanced over. Her pandering, especially when it comes to Israel and Hamas, to those voters. But Alan Dershowitz continued. What both of them should have done is say, look, you have the right to your bigotry. You have the right to your horrible false statements. I will defend your right, but you're wrong about saying it. You're wrong. This is not a two-sided issue. The attacks came from Hamas. Israel is doing everything in its power to avoid civilian casualties. Hamas, according to a message captured by Sinwar, said he wants Israel to kill more Gazan civilians so that their reputation around the world will suffer and they'll be pressured into coming to a resolution that favors Hamas. So Gaza knows, Hamas knows what it's doing. And every single death in Gaza is a fault of Hamas for starting it and for hiding behind human shields. And that's what the American policy should be. So Alan Dershowitz not happy with the way that Harris has tried to kind of walk that tightrope to not lose that, I guess, that vote in Michigan, or as Van Jones said, the marbleization of the Democrat Party with anti-Semitism. But somehow I got on that tangent from saying Nevada will take a week to count all their votes. That's what NBC's Chuck Todd is reporting. Todd's words came as Vice President Harris has warned that Americans may see a repeat, of 2020, wherein the winner of the election is not decided on election night. That is what they are, quote unquote, warning. But we have to take a short break. And then I find these things kind of foolish, and that's why I'm going to bring it to you. 5 simple ways to relieve your election day anxiety when we come back, according to studyfinds.org. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
You rip and tear your old statements and bills and simply toss those old bottles of pills. But thieves use this information to steal your identity. Don't be a victim. Get the ID Police, the new ink roller that encrypts all your old documents. So before you throw it out, just roll it on and your information is gone. Look, an identity thief can use simple information to get access to your credit card. Then you're responsible for the bills. But ID Police permanently prints a unique encryption graphic that makes it impossible to read through, both on the front and through the back, even if the paper is held up to the light. And it works on all forms of paper, matte or glossy. Paper shredders are slow and always jam, but roll with ID Police and you're in control. Watch again. Here's a bank statement with your name and account number. Now, one easy roll and all your personal information is blocked. Name and address? Blocked. Credit card number? Blocked. phone, electricity, and gas bill. Now they're all safe to toss in the trash. So relax. Even your medical information is safe with the ID Police. And those applications or pre-approved checks make you vulnerable too. So block it out before you throw it out. And thwart any thief with the ID Police. Order now and get your ID Police for as low as $9.99 and get free shipping too. That's right, free shipping. This offer is not available on Amazon, but it is available online or on the phone. So call or click now to get your ID Police for as low as $9.99 with free shipping. Take control with ID Police on patrol. Order now.
Call 1-800-731-2964. That's 1-800-731-2964 or visit getidpolice.com. So call 1-800-731-2964 now.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. A beautiful morning out there on Market Street. Thanks so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's take a look at viewer comments. I'm Frank. Ken says, Frank, apparently some homeless people were living under the Washington Avenue Bridge and a fire got out of control. So the bridge was closed until it was checked out for structural damage. Well, thank you for updating us. If you're just joining us because someone asked if it had to do with Peanut the squirrel and a protest there, but no, does not sound like it was. So thank you, Ken. Next up, Frank, I have a wonderful idea, okay? For every dollar that a campaign takes in, they need to take 50 cents and send it to the veterans, homeless people, or to lower the deficit. And for every dollar that is sent to help other countries, an additional dollar will be sent to the same three causes. I bet you that will lower the deficit and also considerably ease those other issues. Very good idea. Yeah, 15.9 billion, was it? What's a couple points amongst friends? 15.9 billion, yes. Spent on presidential and congressional campaigns. Okay, another comment from a viewer. Good morning. Well, hey, good morning. Regarding your question about how we are feeling, oddly, now that the election is almost over, I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I feel relieved and can hardly wait for the results. The only number I'm interested in is that if Trump has gotten 279 electoral votes, I think that is the magic number for a win. It's actually 270 for that win. So, Maybe you have another reason you wanted to get all the way to 279. Okay, 5 simple ways to relieve your election day anxiety. I know many of you are anxious, not that viewer. It's good for you, but I know there are many others. I've received personal text and text on the program this morning about that anxiety from all political parties because polls continue to show how close it is. They're saying, according to studyfinds.org, avoid making everything a catastrophe. Don't focus on the outcome. And don't think about what will happen if your candidate doesn't win. Instead, invest your energy in something that takes your mind off the events and unknowable possibilities, such as engaging in your favorite hobby or reading a good book. Think about actions you can take to continue championing the causes important to you, even if your candidate loses. Next up, remember that emotions wax and wane. Humans are bad at effective forecasting, judging how intense negative emotions will become and how long the negativity will feel overwhelming. We tend to imagine that the effect is going to be bigger on our personal lives than it is. Track your happiness, they say. Next up, we're just trying to do you a public service here, folks. Keep your mind in the moment. Wait, so don't focus on it, and then I'm confused. Research shows that most people's minds are wandering about 50% of the time. Channel your energy into what you're doing at the moment. They suggest a simple exercise. When your attention is wandering, feel your foot on the floor and notice what's right in front of you. The external world tends to be better than what we're ruminating in our minds. Next up, interact with people in real life. Social media can become a toxic reservoir of ill-informed opinions, misinformation, and disinformation. Instead, say hello to someone in line when you're getting coffee or food. Misery loves company, and in this case, social interaction reduces misery. 1 of 4 people say they have ended a friendship over politics, which is heartbreaking. When you are engaged in controversial topics, give up trying to change the person's mind. Focus on curiosity rather than criticism. Avoid inflammatory language and stereotyping. And finally, find balance. Stick with habits that nurture your mental health. Maintain sensible sleep and exercise schedules. Limit your exposure to news. Practice relaxing your face and mind. In conclusion, remember that emotions are malleable, especially when you practice being in the present. All right, just trying to help you folks. As the media pushes negativity for years, and they tell you how to overcome that negativity. Though there is, obviously concern. You've undoubtedly seen the pictures of the barricades at the White House, stores being boarded up, specifically in Washington. Americans are braced for civil unrest, according to the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. And this is a very loaded piece, so I'm not going to go all into it. But if you haven't seen the pictures, it is very interesting. We saw even just locally that violence in Bath, where a man attacked someone with a Trump hat. So I understand when people are on edge. But how are you feeling? That's what matters. What are your thoughts? We do have a few things here about the campaigns in their last day. Obviously, yesterday was their closing arguments, if you will. Donald Trump receiving numerous endorsements. Harris as well. Harris gave a couple rallies, but also went door knocking. Good old-fashioned politics. She did that. We also have Trump giving a rally. Some of the endorsements that he received. We'll be talking about that coming up in a little bit. But at the end of the day, I want to hear what your thoughts are. Will you be staying up? That's a good question. Will you be staying up for the full election coverage? Or do you think you'll be able to sleep? What are your thoughts? So we'll keep reading your comments when we return. It does feel kind of strange not having a guest. We've had so many amazing guests, and I thank all of them for being on right before the election. I mean, the last 2-3 weeks has been nonstop, so I don't know if I'll be able to fill the 2 hours, so I need your help. How are you feeling this morning? But yes, thank you to everybody who took the time out to be on the program and asking for votes, asking for support for an issue like yesterday with Bobby Ann Cox, who just received so much praise online for her stance against Proposition 1. And that's another question I would pose to you. What are your thoughts on Proposition 1? I read a piece early this morning that suggested it probably will pass, but not with the amount that the Prop 1 supporters were hoping for. Not that that changes the fact that it's in there, but they sold it as an anti-abortion. Let me try that again. They sold it as a pro-abortion rights proposition, and so they're hoping for a huge turnout, but because they did such a bad job of selling it and made it so generic that it has scared people, rightfully so, away. If you look at Bobby Ann Cox specifically, she was, or is, I guess, I don't want to put words in her mouth, a Democrat, but she said she's against Proposition 1. And if you look at the way it has been going, of course, Republicans are no on Proposition 1. Democrats are yes on Proposition 1. So it was interesting to hear from her. And also Mike Sapercote running for Senate. We had a busy day yesterday. So let's take that break before I run too long and get on another tangent. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
If you or one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped, I had a gun, and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live. For the better of myself, my family, my weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. and I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on Election Day 2024. Looking for your predictions, not necessarily predictions, but your thoughts, your feelings this morning. Okay, a couple of quick comments from viewers. Amazing how here in New York State it is easier to vote than go to illegal weed stores to buy. That could be. Okay. Frank, of the $15 billion donated, I wonder how much was skimmed off the top. Yeah, well, you know, if you look at it, even with Proposition 1, they were saying that so much of the money that had went to spread the word to try to push Proposition 1 went to overhead, meaning, you know, went to the chairman and all the people in charge. So that's a great question. And the $15 billion doesn't include the in-kind donations that mostly go to Democrats on social media and legacy media pieces that push the Democrats and demonize the Republicans. Yes, I mean, that's all free. And even if you look at something like Saturday Night Live, Ken, I mean, that was basically an in-kind donation, right? Knowing that Donald Trump could not demand his equal time on Saturday Night Live because, of course, the election would be over by the time the next Saturday Night Live came around. So, yes, that's a prime example of it. But continuing, let's not forget taxpayer-funded travel on Air Force Two. Do you think that the largest donors expect anything in return for their donations? The best way to keep corruption out of campaign donations and actually be less costly to the taxpayers would be government funding for elections at a reasonable cap. That's a little bit what we're going here in New York. I'm not a big fan of that necessarily, but I understand your mindset there, Ken, and what you're saying. Because yes, I mean, obviously, when you look at some of those big money donors, they're not just doing it out of the kindness of their heart. Some of them are. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are. But yes, I wonder how much went to quote unquote overhead. This is interesting to me, and this guy can't catch a break. That's President of the United States, Joe Biden. If Vice President Harris loses the election, several Democrat officials believe that Joe Biden will be to blame, according to a new Politico playbook report. After speaking with Democrat insiders, the outlet stated if Harris loses, it'll be because she took the reins too late. I don't know. I mean, I would actually make the argument that she might have been better off if it was even a little bit later. I think the longer the campaigns went on, the worse, or at least the momentum has waned. Already, most Democrat officials we've spoken to agree. If anyone should get the blame for a Trump win, it's Biden. He can't catch a break. After 50 plus years of loyal dedication to the Democrat Party, they stab him in the back, and then when he leaves, now they're blaming him if Harris loses. Now, I know you could make the argument, well, when he called, Trump supporters garbage, that didn't help. Yes, there's some things there. I understand. But just the fact that he waited too long, I don't think is a good argument. That was more of the Democrats protecting him and the media, of course, saying that he was still mentally fit. No, never mind what you're seeing. He's great. He's going to be the best candidate. And then when finally their hands were forced when the debate happened, the live debate happened. So don't think for a moment if that debate didn't happen or if he would have had a little bit better performance, we would still be talking about Biden right now. So I don't know how you blame Biden. I mean, I guess you could blame Pelosi, or you can actually blame Harris, working with Biden, knew behind the scenes. I mean, we've talked about that cover-up, that scandal, that she was a part of the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental health. So I think blaming it on Biden, I mean, this is to the point where you're just kicking a guy when he's down. But do you agree? Do you agree with those Democrat officials as they talk with Politico that if Trump wins, it's all Biden's fault? Now, as I had mentioned, we're going to talk about some predictions coming up here. We also have a couple things here about Trump's campaign. But how am I doing on time? I feel like we're doing just fine. Kamala Harris was interviewed by a Muslim social media influencer. Okay? That interview never saw the light of day after the vice president refused to answer questions about Gaza, but oddly gushed about, of all things, bacon. Now, I think you probably are aware, bacon is a food religiously forbidden for Muslims. This was in a social media influencer interview. Kareem Rama, host of the popular Subway Takes, which boasts almost 1 million combined followers on Instagram and TikTok, made the decision to scrap the interview with Harris, which was filmed over the summer, he told the New York Times. Prior to the interview, Rama was hoping to press Harris on policy, specifically the Biden administration's support for Israel amid the ongoing war in Gaza, which he opposes, per the Times. But despite asking on 3 calls with her team and the Democratic National Committee, he was rejected, that they weren't going to talk about that. That made them concerned because, again, of that demographic in the Democratic Party. So continuing, instead, the campaign agreed that Harris would offer a hot take against people taking off their shoes on airplanes. The show's premise revolves around guests, some of them notable, defending an unpopular opinion or perspective. So that's the best the Harris campaign could come up with, which is some type of stance on people taking off their shoes on airplanes. Rama ultimately agreed to the terms, reasoning that he could choose not to publish the video if it made him uneasy. But when Rama sat down with Harris for the interview, she shared a different hot take, declaring that bacon is a spice. Rama and other observant Muslims do not eat pork in adherence with their faith. I don't know, he reportedly pushed back in the unaired interview. The Times described him as taken aback, that he was shocked that would be, again, doesn't this talk about a little bit of her decision-making and the people around her as well? Many have been critical that she went with Tim Walz, for instance, over Josh Shapiro, that she said some things, done some things that just probably didn't ultimately help the campaign. And this is one of them. Now, granted, he did not release it because it made him uncomfortable. But imagine there's not one person that has your ear in that campaign that says, maybe don't do the hot take of bacon is a spice. Think about it. It's pure flavor, she added. Rama then reportedly paused the interview to tell her he doesn't eat pork, then attempted to redirect Harris to the agreed-upon topic of taking off shoes mid-flight. But Harris doubled down with another food take, which the Times said was on the advice of a staffer praising anchovies on pizza. Well, Rama told Harris in the recording, I'm 100% unsure on both of those. Rama ultimately chose not to air the interview, fearing that it would upset the Muslim community. So, again, man, I know this is social media influence, so it's not... Well, in some cases, that for whatever reason is more important than CNN and elsewhere, but it's not 60 Minutes editing her answers. But going back to Ken's point, the in-kind donations, not releasing this interview, knowing that it could do damage to the Harris campaign on various levels, not just the Muslim voting community, but many people that would see this. He had apprehension about potential criticism from other Muslims, and the bacon talk had thrown him off. It was so complicated because I'm Muslim and there's something going on in the world that 100% of Muslims care about. And then they made it worse by talking about anchovies. Boring. 2 senior Harris campaign officials told the Times that Rama had been told about the bacon topic in advance, but Rama and his manager disputed that. Still, the campaign reportedly apologized for the bacon reference and offered to reshoot, but Rama made the decision not to move forward. Now, he did air a separate interview with Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, who talked about gutter maintenance in an exchange that has since gone viral. Sounds like an interesting show. But anyway, that's the kind of protection that we're talking about. Now, yes, that's a social media influencer. It's a little bit different, but not all that different, unfortunately. We see, well, I mean, in some ways, you see the importance that maybe we here took lightly in many instances with podcasts and other outlets that the candidates now go to. I mean, we saw former President Trump give that 3+ hour interview with Joe Rogan. Then we saw J.D. Vance do the same just the other day, 3+ hours. And then Elon Musk. And yes, we are going to talk about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, in a last-minute endorsement, endorsed former President Trump. We will talk about that. Let's take a look quickly. And again, I want to hear your thoughts on how you're feeling today. Do you feel that it's Biden's fault if Harris doesn't ultimately win? Any of these topics. We've got, I better take a short break because I do want to get to all your comments because that's what's important to me. But we do have a couple predictions. We'll get to a couple endorsements, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly use used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam. Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call. Today, we've got a lot of comments coming in here on Election Day. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for the waves. How are you feeling this morning on Election Day? First up, Democrat loss is their own fault as a whole. The incompetence shown with cabinet and administration choices, as well as reversal of all of Trump's legislation. Thank you. That's in reference to Democrats blaming Joe Biden already. Ken writes, Joe Biden can't catch a break. He got the biggest break of all time. In return for his being a good puppet for Obama and his other handlers, the Biden crime family will never be effectively prosecuted or do any time. Yeah, I'm just joking about the whole can't get a break. I just think it's remarkable that so loyal to the party. Then they kick him out, and then they don't let him have a primetime speaking spot at the DNC. They keep silencing him. I just think it's interesting. They piled on is all I'm trying to say. Next up, Joe Rogan has made the hit list for the elites. Thankfully, they won't be able to cancel him. I've got to admit, I don't know a lot about Joe Rogan's podcast. I have seen clips of him, of course, in the past, but I know they're hugely popular. And it does seem like with some of the things I've heard him say in the past, he does not seem like someone that can be canceled, but you never know. You never know what they can do. Next up, a different comment from a different viewer. I have voted in presidential elections since 1976. And whenever a Democrat has won, it has been on the basis of the candidate presented to be somebody they are not, with the fraud becoming more and more flagrant with each successive campaign. I can't imagine the Democrats topping 2024 with presenting an unprincipled tool of the radical left as a moderate uniter. Perhaps they will run an AI-generated candidate in 2028. Thank you very much. So according to Mudang, which stands for bouncy pig in Thailand, is a baby hippo. Now, where am I going with this? On Monday, Mudang, a 3-month-old pygmy hippo, predicted that the Republican candidate, Donald J. Trump, would be victorious in the election, according to the Times of India. Mudang, whose adorable antics have become a viral sensation on social media, was offered a choice between 2 melon fruit displays, one inscribed with the name of Donald Trump and the other with Kamala Harris. Emerging from the water, the baby hippo quickly opted for the Trump fruit, while another older hippo opted for the Harris fruit. The baby hippo's prediction has been taken as a good omen by Trump supporters on social media, with one user saying, "Pack it up, ladies and gentlemen, it's been decided." Well, he's had a couple. Trump's had a couple lucky predictions, like in Lochelle's Bakery. Remember, I mentioned this in Pennsylvania, in Buskin Bakery in Cincinnati. They've been selling Trump and Harris cookies. They started back in 1984. And locals started in 2008. Both bakeries have been accurate for every presidential election except for 2020. As of last week, both bakeries sold more Trump than Harris cookies, for whatever it's worth. So there's a couple updates. All right, so Joe Rogan did announce his endorsement of Donald Trump yesterday on the eve of Election Day. That's 2 weeks after interviewing the ex-commander-in-chief on his wildly popular podcast. Did you watch that with Trump and J.D. Vance. I mean, they did separate interviews. I've gotten through probably 3/4 of J.D. Vance. It's just 3-hour podcasts are just tough to get through by the end of the day. So I thought they both did wonderful on it, and I give anybody credit on both sides, both the former president, the vice presidential nominee, and the interviewer, Joe Rogan, for a 3-hour interview. That is impressive. But the podcaster announced endorsement on X while promoting his interview with Elon Musk. Yes, he recently interviewed Elon Musk. If it wasn't for him, we'd be out of luck, I'll say. That's not the term Rogan used. He makes what I think is the most compelling case for Trump you'll hear, and I agree with him every step of the way. He's referring to Musk. For the record, yes, that's an endorsement of Trump, Rogan, right? The nonchalant endorsement comes after the podcast host interviewed the former president in October 25th episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, which has, this is so remarkable, 14.5 million Spotify followers. Now, Trump said he gave us the nicest endorsement. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala. You're not a Kamala person. I know you, he told the podcaster during their interview together. Rogan said back in 2023 that he was not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form, but finally gave the Republican his support with less than 24 hours before Election Day. In his new interview with Musk, published yesterday, the podcaster admitted that Trump isn't a perfect choice. The Democrats have done such a job of painting Trump as a monster, you know. They've taken the worst things that he's ever said and amplified them. And he's not a perfect person, Rogan said, but guess what? No one's perfect. They don't exist. He appeared to make the case that Trump was a better option when compared to Harris. There's this one narrative, or there's this other narrative that drives me crazy, is that Trump is going to destroy democracy. So in order to destroy democracy, we have to install a president without a primary. We have to have a candidate that is the least liked vice president of all time, the least popular vice president of all time, and then use gaslighting and the full force of the media machine to turn her into the future and hope she's going to be changed, even though she's the sitting vice president. And he raises such a good point there, one that we've talked about in this program numerous times about the people that are saying Trump's a threat to democracy. Look what they did. They tried to keep him off the ballot, for heaven's sakes. You got the lawfare. You installed Harris in there without a primary. And I like his point, and it's something that's so glanced over, but I think if you're a political type person, you've been following politics, it is very frustrating to see the media in full effect say how great of a candidate she is, to try to push that momentum idea, to push her over the finish line, because again, remember, they were telling us that she was not liked as vice president. That, as a matter of fact, Biden should probably find a new vice president for 2024 so his ticket could become more popular. Then, when he steps down and gives it to her, all of a sudden she's the greatest candidate perhaps ever happened. And to that viewer's point in the morning that she at one time had lost 90% of her staffers because they didn't like working with her. Remember, that was an excuse that they gave that, well, now that's why she's doing so good. She got rid of that dead weight, and now she can really be herself. It is. The media is remarkable, and I think Joe Rogan put it very succinctly there. So anyway, I'll tell you what Donald Trump had to say about it. It is interesting, though. Rogan did endorse Bernie Sanders back in 2020. He's a interesting guy, that Joe Rogan. What are your thoughts? But we got to take a short break and wrap up this hour. Frankly speaking, don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
If you or one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Thank you again to Boss Security. Visit them today in Horseheads for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Hour number 1 of Frankly Speaking, nearly in the books on this election day. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling this morning? Now, we had mentioned Joe Rogan did endorse Donald Trump. Donald Trump's reaction was, oh, wow, I have some more big news. Somebody that's very respected asking me to do his show 2 weeks ago. And I said, why not? To me, it's very big because he's the biggest there is in the world by far, beyond anybody in a long time. His name is Joe Rogan, and he's never done this before. It just came over the wires that Joe Rogan just endorsed me. Isn't that great? Thank you, Joe. He said, that's nice. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that stuff. He tends to be a little bit more liberal. Now, we'll tell you a little bit about that interview that they had, Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. That's where the announcement came from to endorse, or to promote, I should say, the interview. So he endorsed Donald Trump. We do have a couple other surprise endorsements here at the last minute, then a couple back and forth in the media in the next hour. But most importantly, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts going into Election Day? Have you already voted, meaning this morning? Did you go out this morning? Polls close here in New York at 9, in Pennsylvania at 8. Keep that in mind. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about the whole process and what your predictions are, or at least your feelings for tonight. And will you be staying up? Here's a big question. Will you be staying up to watch all the coverage? Because we just don't know what that is going to look like. The media is trying to tell us that it could be days, weeks, months before we know who the president is. So your thoughts. Will you stay up tonight to watch as much as you possibly can? Will you be able to sleep? So how are you feeling this morning? Okay, we got to take a break. It is unbelievable. Thank you again. I know I just got to say this real quickly to all the candidates that put their trust in us here on Frankly Speaking. We had such a great lineup. I mean, just yesterday, surprise guest from running for the United States Senate, Mike Sapricone, stopped by, well, over Zoom. But we had, and that was unannounced until yesterday's program. So we've just had, I mean, look at this laundry list. Brian Maggs, Mary Tarantelli, Phil Palmisano, Michaela Rossetti Azimi, Ed White, Stacey Romeo, Joe Sempolinski, Matt Bizzetti, Matt McCarthy, Bobby Ann Cox, Mike Sapricone. That was just in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And I just looked at my list quickly. But what we also been talking, you know, with these guys that was more local. Where do you think those races are headed? There's a couple in there that are going to be interesting. The family court judge race in Chemung is going to be interesting to watch. The same here with Steuben County Court and Steuben County Family Court here in Steuben. So your thoughts going into that, too. We don't just have to talk about the national scene. But I do have to take that break and wrap up hour number 1. So stay with us. Get those comments in. Get those waves in. How you feeling on Election Day 2024? We'll be taking your comments. We'll be discussing some other endorsements, a little bit of the closing arguments yesterday, and a little bit on the media as well. So it's an interesting day. And I feel a little out of place not having a guest on. I feel... I don't know how to think. So you got to help me. You got to help me fill the next hour. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Should be electric today. The crowd, the atmosphere, this is what makes it special.
Here we go.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us on Election Day 2024. A couple comments from viewers before we get right back into it, because I'm asking everyone how they feel going into Election Day. I don't know, Frank. Bad sign. Trump didn't show up on your show. You could turn the election. Well, thank you. I wish he would have been able to come on Frankly Speaking, but I want to take it as a sign one way or the other for Trump's campaign, though it could have helped. It could have helped. Next up, a comment from Ken. Moondang, that's the baby hippo that predicted that Trump, yes, if you're just tuning in, you're saying, what in the world's happening? It was a baby hippo that predicted Trump would be president. This is what Ken had to say. Moondang's method of selecting a president sounds like a great idea. We should adopt that method. Possibly a bald eagle would land on one of two nests, either Democrat or Republican. It'd be cheaper, less stressful, results election morning, harder to rig, and we wouldn't have to listen to weeks of pandering. That's true. But what if they got to one of the eagles or to one of the nests? I don't know. Elon Musk and Joe Rogan debunked hoaxes about Trump, and I like when this is put out there because there's so many people that don't know. And Joe Rogan reaches a crowd that's different than those watching the nightly news and seeing the bias on the nightly news. Elon Musk said, like the fine people hoax. Obama just said that, and I'm like, we'll say what the heck. As Rogan said, flat out lies. He talked about how Harris has been campaigning on portraying Trump's vow to protect women, whether they like it or not, as a signal that he intends to impose federal restrictions on abortion. They were trying to say that he was taking away women's right to choose whether women liked it or not. That's not what he was saying at all. He was literally talking about protecting them from dangerous people that are sneaking in through the border. Musk interjecting, they'll take like not even a full sentence, like a half of a sentence from him, and then they'll push it on every ad. And that's the thought I've had, and I've said this on the program numerous times. If he is so bad like they tell us, if he is so bad, then why do they have to make up bad things that he said or bad things that he does? They keep talking threat to democracy, these type of things, but yet they'll lie about what he had to say. It's very interesting to me. So Musk went on to call false reports that Trump called for the execution of former Liz Cheney as utter garbage, we'll say. It's not what he said at all. All he said, it was like if Liz Cheney actually had to fight at the front lines, she would think twice about going to war. I had tons of people calling me this weekend saying, oh, Trump says he's going to put Liz Cheney in a firing squad. I'm like, this is an outrageous lie, yes. But the media and the left is very good at that. They push it a couple times and they can run with it, and it gets the traction and it stays, just like the very good people hoax that has been proven time and time again to be a hoax. Another surprise endorsement. What do you think of Megyn Kelly coming out and revealing that she's voting for Trump? I've got to say, I was surprised by that. Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump had no real love lost there for a while. If you recall, she was on Fox at the time, and she went after Trump in one of the early Republican primary debates. And then they had kind of the fighting back and forth for quite some time. Well, Megyn Kelly appeared at a rally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, revealing to the crowd that she's backing Trump because of the Democrats' handling of illegal immigration and transgender policies. Kelly listed instances of illegal migrants accused of killing young Americans like Georgia College student Laken Riley and 12-year-old Texan Joycelyn Nungari, as she blamed Vice President Harris for opening up the southern border by choice. Now, she does have a popular podcast as well. I guess this is the year of the podcast. She's been very outspoken about boys and women's locker rooms, etc. He got mocked by the left for saying that he will be a protector of women. He will be a protector of women, and that's why I'm voting for him, Kelly said. She got quite a round of applause. She was very much loved at this rally. He will close the border. He will keep the boys out of the girls' sports and where they don't belong. And you know what else? One more thing. He will look out for our boys, too, our forgotten boys and our forgotten men. She said men with blue-collar jobs, with the beards and the tats, don't want to be judged by celebs supporting Harris like Oprah and Beyonce, who will never have to face the consequences of her disastrous economic policies. President Trump gets it. He will not look at our boys like they're second-class citizens. And ladies out there who want a bit of girl power this election, let me tell you something. How can you win when the sons and the husbands and the brothers that you love are losing? She also took a shot at Democrats' version of masculinity and the marriage between Harris and her husband, Doug, and her husband, Doug Emhoff. We know about that. I do not remember a single media person, not one, who sat with him asking him about the abuse allegations against him. Yeah, clearly a double standard. Clearly a double standard from what a Republican would be treated with. Kelly said, I'm not into their version of toxic masculinity or new masculinity. I prefer the old version. I prefer a president who understands how to be strong and how to fight. Kelly, who said she voted for Trump last week, has had a complicated relationship with Donald Trump. But yeah, I thought that was, were you surprised by that? It was very interesting. And Megyn Kelly doing a good job of picking apart why Donald Trump, in her mind, would be a better president than Kamala Harris. Also, and I'm not familiar with this guy, and we're going to talk about when we come back from break, Mark Pincus. He's a tech billionaire and a lifelong Democrat. He, too, said he is voting for Trump. So some last-minute endorsements coming out. Now, what did you? But were you surprised by Megyn Kelly? Because again, no love lost between the two at one point. But it seems like her podcast, hearing some of the things that she's been saying, it makes sense why she would support Donald Trump. We do have a couple media updates that I want to get to a little bit later on as well. I'm just looking at my time and how we're doing. We have so many comments coming in too. Let me take a short break. When we come back, we'll get into that endorsement. We'll get into your comments. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
Brian Maggs, a trusted leader and Army veteran. In 16 years of prosecuting and supervising family court cases, Brian has fought for the well-being of families and children. He respects and supports our constitutional rights. He's committed to our community, and he's dedicated to justice. Brian is a devoted husband and father of 4 daughters who believes that supported families build strong communities. For Family Court Judge, vote Brian Maggs.
Our water's better tasting, it's better for the planet.
That's great, sir. Can I take your order?
Oh, number 3.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install our drinking water and softening systems, we're thinking about filtering contaminants and the minerals that make water hard. So you can just think about softer, cleaner, better tasting water. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
Hi, Ann. Welcome to Pangea Global Tea House.
Pangea Global Tea House offers comfort foods of the world. Over 50 teas, a sampling of cuisine from over 10 countries. Globally inspired cuisine and striving to give you an ultimate experience. Come in and try the frankly delicious Turkey Club special for just $20, including your beverage of choice. Pangea Global Tea House. Yet a really good tea house bringing you the flavors of the world, offering something for everyone.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
And we are back. Brought to you, the roof cam that is, by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Okay, so I ran up to get a new tee. Anyway, you don't need to know all that, but the reason I did that is to tell you I have not had a chance to read all your comments, and there's so many coming in. I apologize. I will read them after the next break. The first one that I did see, though, I thought this was a great point. 248 years could be changed today. Thank you very much. All right. Keep the comments coming in. We'll get to them after the next break, which is not that much further away. So tech billionaire and lifelong Democrat Mark Pincus has seen too much, he said. Lifelong Democrat Mark Pincus. He's a video game billionaire. He declared on Sunday he's pulling the lever for Donald Trump after seeing, quote, too much over the past year. Pincus, who founded video game behemoth Zynga, threw his support behind Donald Trump over Harris, even though he previously donated a cool $1 million to President Biden's then re-election campaign. Interesting. Do you think there, now I'll pose this question, especially if you are a Democrat out there watching, is there still any hard feelings over you voting for Biden and then he just isn't your nominee? Or is that just, I think at this point it's just accepted, right? I mean, it's election day. I guess you have no choice. But he said, I'm voting for Trump. I've been a lifelong Democrat, supporting the past 4 presidential campaigns at $1 million each. This past year, I have seen too much. He listed the U.S. declining relationship with Israel, exploding anti-Semitism nationwide, and the ongoing war against free speech as reasons he wants a 45th president back in the White House. And yes, if you want to talk about the fight against anti-Semitism, if that is a major concern for you, then yes, Donald Trump would be the right person in that instance. As we've talked about all morning and have talked about for weeks, is kind of the tightrope that Harris has been walking in regards to that vote. Because let's face it, we've seen it on college campuses, we've seen it everywhere in the streets of the anti-Semitic protests, the anti-American protests. So in this instance, this gentleman Pincus, that was one of his major reasons for voting. Israel is America's most loyal ally and the only democracy in the Middle East. It is fighting Iran on 7 fronts, and yet it can no longer trust the U.S. Yeah, that goes back to the pager issue. They did not tell us that. Those pagers would explode because we would blab, just like when those documents were released about their potential attack of Iran. Reportedly worth somewhere around $1 billion, Pincus was one of a growing number of Democrat megadonors to encourage Biden to drop out of the race, the Financial Times reported over the summer. He told the outlet he preferred Democrats hosted an open convention to pick their nominee. But after Biden dropped out, prominent Democrats were quick to rally around Harris. Pincus helped start you don't care about all the software firm. He wrote on Sunday, I know America will continue to be great under the Dems or Trump, and yet I think America and Israel will be stronger under Trump. So interesting there. Just another last minute endorsement. Again, if you're just joining us this morning as we are into hour number 1, what are your thoughts going into today? How are you feeling? You had one viewer say relief, that it's just over. I can understand that mindset as well. Now, Trump has urged supporters to show up and vote in the final rally hours before polls open on Election Day. Now, if you are just tuning in, Dixville Notch, that small little town or hamlet in New Hampshire, the vote was split, which means actually Donald Trump did better than normal. But the vote was split right down the middle, which could be a sign, unfortunately, of things to come today with the coverage, right? They say it's, but I don't ever trust the polls. And I know we've talked about this here on the program a lot. I don't trust the polls. I think they're very often used to manipulate people and manipulate voters. And Nate Silver, who's a Democrat, and he admits that. Nate Silver is that pollster, whatever you want to call him. And he said that he thinks the pollsters are just being lazy. Because it statistically is impossible to keep getting 50-50 like this, or 49 point. They're scared. They don't want to change any kind of momentum for Harris. They don't want to change any. They don't want to go out on a limb. So they've been, in his case, kind of sandbagging it a little bit or covering up the actual numbers. But he wouldn't say where those numbers were. But anyway, so Trump. I went on another tangent. This has been an incredible journey. It's very sad in a way because, we've done all these and this is the last one, meaning the rally. But there's the good news. All we're doing is putting ourselves in a position to win, which we could do tomorrow easily if we show up. He promised to deliver a better future for the country and for Michigan auto workers on day 1. We're going to do some great things for Michigan. We're going to bring the car business blazing back. We're going to make Detroit greater than it ever was. If we win Michigan, we win the whole thing, he said. He appeared optimistic early Tuesday, predicting he would beat Harris in the, quote, single greatest victory in the history of our country, but still urged Michigan residents to get to the polls. I don't necessarily I understand what he's doing. He's showing confidence, but it doesn't seem like it takes much for people to need an excuse not to go to the polls, unfortunately. Would you vote tomorrow? We could fix every single problem our country faces and lead America to new heights of glory, Trump said. He would secure the southern border, end inflation very quickly, and bring back the American dream. We're going to turn our country around. I will end inflation very quickly, and I will stop the invasion of criminals coming across our border. I will strengthen our military. I will restore peace in the world, and I will rescue the American dream. This is in his final rally. But you know what's interesting? You hear all that language that he's using there, and yet the media continues to try to push this narrative that it's all dark, doom, and gloom in the Trump campaign. Together, we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country, and we will launch the most extraordinary economic boom the world has ever seen. To every person, every citizen of this land, I'm asking for the honor of your vote. When you vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America to new heights of glory. So that was Donald Trump's last pitch to the voter. So what do you think on these last few days and the wrap up of both campaigns? And then, of course, today being Election Day, polls open till 9 in New York, 8 o'clock for our friends in Pennsylvania. But not just the national front. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the local races. We've had so many candidates on these last few weeks that I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. That's what today's show is all about. It's Election Day, so they made their last-minute pitches last night. We hear a couple last-minute endorsements, but pretty much it's all over but the voting, so to speak. So now we take a look at your thoughts of what will happen tonight or when you think it'll happen. Many predicting it's not going to be tonight, that we won't have the results for days, weeks, months, depending on what outlet you go to. But we do have to take a break, but I see a lot of comments coming in, so please keep them coming in. Also, keep those waves coming in. I do appreciate it. Let's take that short break just so I can compile all these comments and read them when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
If you or one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong. Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
And we are back. Thank you again to Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Call them today for all your business and home security needs. Election Day edition of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you again for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. It's the feel of Election Day. Let's go to some viewer comments. Harris was a terrible candidate who never received any votes. 6 months ago, the Dems were trying to find another running mate for Joe. Yeah, that's something that is glanced over very frequently. If you recall, it was brought up numerous times. Should we get somebody else in there for VP so Biden's chances improve? Harris had the huge cash campaign fund with her name on it. So to that point, from the Democrats are upset, Biden did, in their mind, wait too long. She gets many of the votes that she does because millions of government workers have been found to be non-essential. A new Department of Government Efficiency will cut the workforce. Yes, so they're going to lose those jobs. I'm kind of cutting some of these down. I apologize. I expect a recession when all the spending ceases, but long term, it's all good. And thanks to the migrant issue in New York City, I think there's a chance of turning New York red. After that, the Harry Reid political machine in Nevada can count late votes until Christmas. Well, there's a thought. There's a question to pose for today. I know Donald Trump has tried to make a play for New York. Do you think that that's a possibility? I personally, I'm jaded. I do not. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, we got a lot of comments coming. Sorry. I don't like reading them live on there like that. All right. Oh, I mentioned this one, 248 years could be changed today. Here's another comment. If you repeat the lies, enough people believe it. And being that people find Trump abrasive, it's easy for them to believe lies. Sure, and that's to what Joe Rogan's point was. They constantly push these lies, or like Musk said, they might not even do the full sentence that he said, just a piece of it. Like she's trying to say that I'm going to protect women, whether they like it or not. Harris has been campaigning that was about abortion. That's not the case, not whatsoever. It was about border safety. It was about public safety. So yes, they just keep pushing the lies, and the media does a great job. If they don't, it goes back to the whole controversy of fact checking, right? They fact check Donald Trump, and even the moderators admit they had practiced so that they could fact check Donald Trump and prepare for what he was going to say and what he might bring up. So they had been prepared for it, but not when it came to Harris. So it would be nice if one of these, the few interviews that she really did, if it would have come up, a fact check and saying, well, you keep saying this about Trump, but that's just not true. But they're not used to that pushback, meaning the Democrat candidates, but also that would throw her off with the word salad, that no moderator or no host is going to do that to her. Not if they want to keep their job. Next up. Do you think the longer it takes to determine the winner, that the Democrats will steal the election? My feeling is, since the Democrats and the biased media have shown they are capable of any despicable act, that the longer it takes, the more time they will have to manipulate the results in their favor. I don't personally feel that way. But I understand the concern because there's another person here that had something very similar, but not quite worded like that. But frankly, wife and I voted at Corning Library to avoid any potential lines. In and out, well operated. So much is on the line regarding America's direction, but I am calm with just a slight amount of apprehension regarding voter integrity. Understand that. I understand a lot of people's concern on that. And it's one of the reasons why when they start saying it's going to take longer. So to all the viewers' points that have made that this morning, I understand the concern. Yes, and I voted at the Corning Library last Thursday about 3. For whatever reason, I picked very, very busy time. But yes, in and out, everybody that worked there was friendly and helpful, and it was a nice feeling. I would definitely do it again, though. Here on Election Day, I kind of feel a little sad not getting to go out to the polls and cast my ballot. But I enjoyed it while it lasted on Thursday, and it was fun. But it does feel strange knowing that I don't need to go to my polling location. So the New York Post columnist and a Fox Business senior correspondent, his name's Charles Gasparino. We've mentioned him in the past. He revealed late yesterday, how former President Trump's campaign team is assessing the race today. Gasparino reported that inside the Trump campaign, the belief is the GOP nominee will assuredly win 4 of the 7 swing states, and that he has the momentum in a 5th. He wins Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada. Michigan is really tough. Wisconsin, tough, but less so. But they think they have the momentum in Pennsylvania. And even Senator Fetterman, who's a Democrat, of course, saying that there is something that really resonates with the people of Pennsylvania and Donald Trump. So something to keep in mind. The Democrats' ground game is great, but it failed in the early voting turnout. So maybe that's a tell. Of course, it's all guesswork, but that's what I'm hearing, Gasparano caution. Trump victories in Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada, and Pennsylvania would almost certainly net the former president enough electoral college votes to defeat Vice President Kamala Harris, regardless of whether he loses Michigan and Wisconsin. But there he is again, Donald Trump saying, we're leading. It's ours to lose, but vote anyway. I don't understand it. We're leading. All we have to do is we have to close it out. If we get our vote, there's nothing they can do. I've never lost in North Carolina, he said. It's ours to lose. Does that make sense to you? It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do. Get out and vote. We're doing something historic. I'd like to begin by asking a very simple question, he said at the rally. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And of course, the crowd went wild and said no. He said, we have a new president in Mexico. I'm going to inform her on day one or sooner. If they not stop this onslaught of criminals and drugs coming into our country, I'm going to immediately oppose a 25% tariff on anything they send into the United States of America. Now, political experts said for months that whichever candidate wins Pennsylvania wins the election. That still just blows my mind that she did not pick Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro to be her running mate. But Harris could win Pennsylvania and lose the election, according to Mark Halperin. My reporting is that Harris is in trouble in Wisconsin. Interesting. National swing state polling suggests Harris and Trump are virtually tied. Early voter data, which is more valuable than polling at this point in the race, indicates a strong position for Trump, although it is unclear if the data will continue to trend in the right direction. Halperin said this is based on 3 sources, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, all of whom know the state quite well, and all of whom told me today the same version of they would be somewhere between surprised and shocked if Kamala Harris won Wisconsin. The focus has been on Pennsylvania. Harris may well win Pennsylvania and win the election, but she could win Pennsylvania and lose the election because she doesn't win Wisconsin. Watch Wisconsin. Interesting. So we're just giving you a couple of the last minute, because remember, there's not a lot of news to, right at this moment. It's not as if the polls have closed, though in that one, why is the name always escaping me? But that first one in New Hampshire, in that small town of New Hampshire, they voted for a tie, which is troubling. Yeah, I don't see here, but I think it was, 3-3? But Donald Trump making his last-minute pitch, as I said, he was in front of a massive crowd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think Kamala Harris was in Pittsburgh at the same time. We do not have to live this way. We do not have to settle for weakness, incompetence, decline, and decay, he said at the rally. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? If you vote for Kamala, you will have 4 more years of misery, failure, and disaster. Our country may never recover. Vote for me, and I will deliver rising wages, soaring incomes, and a colossal surge of jobs, wealth, and opportunity for Americans of every race, religion, color, and creed. We do not have to live this way. We don't, and we won't. We do not have to settle for weakness, incompetence, decline, and decay. Now, I forgot to mention too. So he received an endorsement from Joe Rogan. He received, I guess, an endorsement from Megyn Kelly, which I'm not sure if she'd been on the record, though I think if you watch some of her podcasts, it would come as no surprise that she was supporting Trump. But Roberto Clemente Jr., the son of legendary Pittsburgh Pirate Roberto Clemente, endorsed Donald Trump, saying it's very important for me to support this man. I believe in everything you stand for right now, being able to make a change for our families. And I mentioned Megyn Kelly, and then the endorsement by Joe Rogan. Now, Trump's campaign says it is the most important day in the history of our country. It's the day that national nightmare that is Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Joe Biden, and their band of radical left lunatics will be relegated to the dustbin of history once and for all. And the journey of restoring America to strength, opportunity, and prosperity begins. So I ask again the question, how are you feeling today? What are your thoughts? When we come back, we're going to hear from some pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Harris, anti-Harris, however you want to look at it. We've got a couple of updates from the media that I think you're going to find kind of interesting. And I think that about does it for everything that we have to cover this morning. But I keep posing the questions. How are you feeling this morning? People seem to be calm out there. I know the media has been pushing for quite some time this idea that everybody's riddled with anxiety, that everybody's sick to their stomach all the time. Now, I know some people are very, let's just say, fed up with the various campaign ads and the text messages. I've heard from a lot of people this year that the text message is out of hand at this point. Well, there's a reason why $15.9 billion was spent, right, on presidential and congressional races. They had to ask somewhere. They had to do it $5 at a time. So people fed up with that point. So there's kind of a calm in that way that, all right, good. That type of stuff is over. I'm concerned about how long it will take before we actually have answers, just like last time, but even maybe more so. They're saying Nevada could be weeks to count. I know Pennsylvania doesn't start counting their ballots, their absentee and mail-in ballots, until the polls close at 8. So that can take quite some time. I mean, we're not going to really, other than the local races, which there are some fascinating local races, which I'm really looking forward to finding out what happens there. But other than local races, we're not going to be hearing about presidential anytime soon. But are your thoughts to stay up, or is there just going to be some point where you say, okay, at this point, I might as well go to bed and find out what happens in the morning? That's kind of what happened last time. And I think a lot of people are upset how things changed when they woke up. But I haven't really put my finger on exactly my game plan either. We're going to be here to talk about it. Whatever that it is, we are going to be here bright and early at 6 a.m. or before to talk about it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. One quick, because we've been talking all about the presidential election this morning. I did want to make this quick announcement. Congressman Nick Langworthy did announce $290,000 in federal support for a new snowplow in Southport. He announced a federal funding package totaling $290,000 for the town of Southport in Chemung County to strengthen public safety and enhance winter road maintenance, saying, quote, harsh southern tier winters require that our towns have the tools to keep roads clear and safe. This federal investment will give Southport the necessary resources to respond effectively to winter storms, protect residents, and ensure access for emergency vehicles. I'm proud to deliver this vital support and will continue working to meet the unique needs of rural communities across New York's 23rd congressional district. So that's Congressman Nick Langworthy, a little bit off the beaten path of what we've been talking about all this morning. But when we come back, we're going to hear from Hope Hicks. Remember that name? She weighs in on what we're seeing. We've got a piece here, not too friendly with Trump, some other things about the media. So stay with us. Make sure you get your comments in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Oh, better tasting is better for the planet.
That's great, sir. Can I take your order?
Oh, number 3.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install our drinking water and softening systems, we're thinking about filtering contaminants and the minerals that make water hard. So you can just think about softer, cleaner, better tasting water. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
The Fox website website is here, now, WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news, here, now. WYDCTV.com.
And we are back, frankly speaking. Thank you to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam. Call Boss Security today for all your home and business security needs and horse heads. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. What a busy morning. We have so many comments coming in. I just have not been able to get to all of them. I apologize. But they're really great comments, and we will, before it's all over, we will get to as many of them as we possibly can. So please keep them coming in. Let's go. Let's start off here. Oh, yes, I saw one was a Family Life Network had put aside today for a day of prayer for the election, and their parting words was to make sure that we are all voting and the overall in our viewpoint that we all believe that the good Lord is in charge and will pick the one that goes and the one that stays and stays. Thanks again. Don't know if yep. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad you passed that along. People praying. Next up. All the money Harris has spent, and we still don't know what she means to do, how she will do it, and how she will pay for it. And that's an interesting point. So if you're just joining us, this is not just Harris, but overall on federal spending, federal office, and so presidential and congressional, $15.9 billion. So yes, we do realize that a lot of that went to Kamala Harris. She was one of the earliest presidential candidates to reach $1 billion. To spend, and that's been one of the concerns and criticisms of her is not a lot of substance, not a lot of actual information. So thank you for that. Next up, Frank. I'd suggest a drinking game to cope with election night, but then I don't have to be on the air at 6 tomorrow. Yes, that's not the best idea, but I do appreciate the thought. It's a thought that counts. But yes, I don't think you want to see that, frankly speaking, if that were the case. Next up, what is the chances of going more Republican in Albany look like? Well, that's a great question. Maybe more Republican. I don't think Republican. I don't know. So many people, I don't want to be someone that's just pessimistic all the time. So many people, because of the huge rallies that Trump had, because some of the things that Trump said, believe that New York could go red. I'm just jaded after years of being told that and then not coming true. So maybe tomorrow you guys can all come on here and laugh at me and ridicule me for being jaded. And I would be more than happy to accept that. And I'd appreciate it, as a matter of fact. We've got other comments coming in. Keep them coming in, please, and I will read them coming up after the next break. All great comments this morning. Hope Hicks, you remember Hope Hicks. She served as the White House Communications Director for Donald Trump and later as a counselor for the president. And she said almost 10 years into former President Donald Trump's historic political movement, his critics still cannot grasp what makes him so popular with everyday hardworking Americans. And they still demonize the men and women who support him. And we could talk about this specifically. This is Hope Hicks making her prediction going into the election. And we've talked about that, the demonizing of the people that support him. We saw it with Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. We saw that there aren't, according to Mark Cuban, strong, intelligent Trump-supporting women. The list can go on and on. But she says President Biden smearing them as garbage was obviously not only offensive, but just plain wrong. Trump supporters are good, decent people who believe he will make their lives in America better. Why? Because he did it once already. In early 2015, I should say, I was working in communications at the Trump organization when Trump, my boss, told a small group of us that he would be running for president. From our first trip to Iowa that January, I knew he was going to win. Sure, our team consists of exactly 0 professional politicos. Most of us had never even been to Iowa before. But this undeniably talented candidate from the very beginning was offering the kind of leadership Americans were craving. He was politically incorrect, saying things that were obvious and true. He was at times brash and controversial. Well, and that was one of the mistakes that the media has recognized that they made it, in their mind, a mistake. They broadcast these rallies that Trump was holding because they thought it was like a circus and they thought it was something to laugh at. And they didn't realize that the message started to really speak to the people, the quote-unquote forgotten men and women that Donald Trump talks so often about during those rallies. So it was really interesting to see the light bulb go off too late for the media to say, whoa, maybe we shouldn't have been showing these nonstop. He simultaneously became a pariah to the media and political class and beloved by the people. He was authentic to his core, never not wearing a suit and tie. He always looked like he came straight from the boardroom, no matter the occasion. This is Hope Hicks again. And I'm not going to go through this whole piece, but when other staffers suggested he carry his own suitcase from his personalized 757 airplane to look more like a regular guy, Trump refused. He would always tell us how smart the people are, the American people are. They would know it was phony if he did something like that. People understood he wasn't going to apologize for his success. So again, the list goes on and on of why Hope Hicks believes she's seeing very similar in 2024 to what she saw back in 2016. The big difference is, of course, the media's coverage. Not that the media were friendly in any way to him, but they were more willing to show his rallies, his broadcasts, talk more about him. If you recall, I believe when he was in the primary, he was even on Saturday Night Live. That would never happen today. So it is a completely different landscape. We're going to talk about the media here in just a moment, but a completely different landscape. But she said, I voted for Donald Trump in 2024 for the same reason I worked on his campaigns and in his White House, because I know the American people can count on him. On Tuesday, vote for Donald Trump and join me as we write the next chapter in a story of American greatness we can all be a part of. That's Hope Hicks, served as White House Communications Director for President Trump. Now, on the other side of the coin, because we always try to give you the other side of the coin, Pablo Ohana writes at Metro, I went to a Trump rally. The curtains are closing on this circus. Okay, this spectacle, pioneered by Donald Trump, has become synonymous with his brand. However, ironically, by Trump's own measure, the curtains are closing on this tired, unoriginal, boring circus, a dwindling sideshow, losing its once hypnotic power, and I witnessed it firsthand. Now, I know many of you have reached out in the past and who have went to a Trump rally. Do you believe that the curtains are closing, that he believes it's all over, that it doesn't have the impact that it once did? But this is interesting because back in 2016, they said the rallies were just anecdotal. They mean absolutely nothing. Sure, he's getting good crowds, but it means nothing. I mean, that's why many still think that Bernie would have been an interesting candidate over Hillary because he was packing in those big rallies as well. But anyway, they said, no, it's all anecdotal, doesn't mean anything. Just happens to be people there to see a TV star. Now on the other side of it, oh, nope, they're just not popular anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. It's interesting how they try to rewrite history. And unfortunately, this whole article goes into like a long, deep dive into this person who's an admitted liberal, this person's feeling of a Trump rally that they're all over. That is not what it used to be. And again, I don't want to read the whole thing, but he launched into his greatest hits, Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary. It was all well rehearsed, but tired and devoid of real conviction. The scripted shouts of a miserable, failing spectacle from an audience there simply out of habit, not from substance. And then he talks about individuals he meant there. It was all at its core. He's referencing here a Trump rally. It was all at its core a tedious, drawn-out circus that promised the thrill of a high-wire act, but delivered the dullness of a retired clown stumbling through a routine. Like watching a real bad sequel, all the same characters, but none of the charm or magic of the original. As the uninspired ringmaster rambled aimlessly, lacking the fire that he once made his show captivating, it became clearer that the curtains were closing on Trump's circus, and it couldn't come soon enough. So your thoughts on that? See, we give all the... Now, what's interesting about that, too, and we're going to get to this when we come back, because we're going to spend the rest of the show here just kind of talking about some quick media issues and reading your comments and asking you how you feel this morning on Election Day. But there's an interesting kind of behind closed doors meetings at the New York Times. If you recall, the New York Times said that they no longer had to be fair, they no longer had to be balanced because they could not have Donald Trump go to the White House. So they threw off any kind of guise of impartiality, and it was all, we're going to be biased. Well, now internally, they're not happy that they weren't biased enough, that one reporter asking at this behind closed doors meeting, why didn't we bring out Trump's age earlier? Well, you know the answer for that, because you were constantly saying you can't talk about Biden's age, you can't look at any of the issues with Biden. And then as soon as Biden went by the wayside, and Nancy Pelosi and others made sure that he was no longer the candidate at the debate, then all of a sudden everybody wanted to bring up, it was very disingenuous, but then everybody wanted to bring up age and wanted to bring up, well, Trump should have a mental acuity test. But when you called for the same thing of the president of the United States, Joe Biden, you were called conspiracy theorist, you were called very nasty names, question why you would question the president. So again, this goes back to really a scandal of covering up Biden's mental health, and we've been talking about it all morning with now some Democrats behind the scenes saying that if Harris were to lose, if Trump were to win, that they blame Biden because he did not get out soon enough. That yes, he did get out, securing his legacy, making him like George Washington. Remember all the praise they heaped on him, but now kind of Monday morning quarterbacking it, saying, wait a minute. Wait just 1 minute. Maybe he should have got out even earlier. But if you recall at the time, many people were saying, why didn't you do this earlier if you were going to step down? Because if you recall that week, he had still sent out a letter saying to everyone that he was running and he's going to go get him. And that's when we knew that he wasn't long for the presidential campaign, because Nancy Pelosi came out after he released that letter and said, well, we'll let Joe make up his mind and say what he thinks, even though he had released a letter saying exactly what he thought. So anyway, we're just looking back a little bit here at the election, but I do have to take a short break, get those comments in, and we'll be right back. We're Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped, I had a gun, and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live. For the better of myself, my family, my weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
The Boss Security Roof Cam. Visit them today in Horseheads for all your business and home security needs. Let's go to some viewer comments as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio and get ready to wrap up this election day, frankly speaking. Okay, first up, have to agree that the texts are out of hand and I may need to reconsider donations down the road. I understand that. Knock on wood. I hope I'm safe now. I received some texts, but people were showing me their phones and how it was nonstop. People somehow, I always feel bad for this, but people that aren't political somehow got on a mass chain somewhere and just can't find a way off of it. I have heard from a lot of both political parties here complaining about how many text messages and emails they were receiving, and I could understand why it may make people hesitant to to support someone in the future, because I understand they can get very annoying. Next up, if she taxes the rich, meaning Harris, the rich will send their money to foreign countries and or simply move from the U.S. Middle class beware. Thank you very much. Next up, true, the curtains have closed on Trump rallies. There will never be another after this Trump presidency. The Trump rallies as we know them, running for president, will be gone, and were as of yesterday, the last one yesterday. Hey, Frank, hey. Just got back from voting and wanted to thank you for having all those candidates on your show. I and my wife felt very good knowing more about them and the issues. Thanks again. Keep up the good work. Head into the golf course with my I voted sticker on. Good for you. You got the mindset I voted early. But I really appreciate that. That's kind of you to say, and that's why we wanted to have so many people on. It feels good to know when you go into the booth exactly why and who you're voting for. And having the candidates on the program to say why they ran and what they would say to voters, I just find that very important. And that's why we had such a laundry list of everybody running in the area, even some that are running unopposed, but still wanted to say to voters, really, to thank you for their support through the years. It'll be interesting to watch former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. Now, he's out of our area. We were joking about that last week. He just a little bit of Steuben, but he wasn't running against Phil. We were joking about that, Phil Palmisano. It'll be interesting to follow his race because that is contested. Langworthy's is contested against Carl. That'll be a close. But then you've got the very local where you've got the family court judge in Chemung County. That's going to be fascinating to watch. You can vote for 2 people, and there's 3 candidates. And then on the Steuben County Court and Steuben County Family Court, there are the 2 candidates. That's a contested race too. So those are going to it's not always just about the national, right? There's some interesting races to be found at home, and I'm sure I'm even forgetting some, like the New York State Supreme Court candidates who we had on last week. We had the Republican Ed White on and the Republican Stacey Romeo. We had Aaron Skinner, who's on the Democrat ticket, and there was another Democrat who just didn't, I don't know their schedule, just didn't have an opportunity to come on the show. So that was, it was nice to have as many candidates on as we possibly could. So thank you for saying that. All right, next up, Barry Diller called the Washington Post timing of the decision to quash endorsements a blunder. Now, is this really as big of a story as they're making out to be? I mean, have you ever, and I mean this seriously, I'd love to know, have you ever had a newspaper endorsement change your opinion on who you were going to vote for? Media tycoon Barry Diller, a friend to Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, called the timing of the newspaper's decision not to endorse a presidential candidate a blunder. They made a blunder. It should have happened months before, and it didn't. And that's the issue with it. I don't know. I think it was absolutely principled, he said. And the mistake they made, and it was a mistake admitted by him, was timing. The non-endorsement, which broke from 36 years of tradition, elicited outrage from staffers, readers, and journalists. At least 250,000 readers canceled their subscriptions in the days following the paper's announcement. Well, and I think, to Jeff Bezos' credit, the op-ed that he wrote to explain exactly why he had made this decision, I thought was very good, saying that when we endorse, we're showing a bias that we don't want people to perceive a bias, that we have this bias. And it has been, and it is something historic that I was found very strange because the media always trying to say they're not biased, and then at the last minute making an endorsement in a campaign. And that ties in with the New York Times wrestling with its political role. Now, they made this political role for themselves. Remember, they said that in no uncertain terms that they did not have to be fair to Donald Trump because they did not want him to win, because he was that big of a threat. That was back in 2016. So there is the political role, as we know, but they don't think they've done enough. We got, and this was in a 90-minute long off-the-record Q&A with the paper's top editors. It was leaked to Semaphore. We got a lot of questions from folks worrying about what is the effect of the sane washing of him, meaning Trump, a term that has come up in terms of criticism of our coverage. We also noticed as we were preparing these questions, it does feel like in the last month the paper has gotten more direct and more frank about Trump. Others in the newsroom noticed too. One colleague wrote, "Can you talk about the decision to cover Trump's age so aggressively in the last few weeks, but not before that? Should we make that take that as a reaction to some of the external criticism? Why has there been a shift? Because it does not seem like there's been a more direct tone against Trump in the last couple of months. Is that intentional?" That was just because they could go after the age. They couldn't when they were still trying to protect and cover up for Joe Biden. Oh my goodness, we got to take another short break. Get those last minute comments in on Election Day. We'll get to them when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmaron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmaron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmaron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Hi, I'm Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking on Election Days. We broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been asking all morning long how you're feeling. What do you think? It's Election Day, right? Let's go to some viewer comments. I will say the logical part of my brain feels really good about the election because I can't comprehend anyone who would vote for the candidate forced on them. But I've also seen so many games and trickery, and they'll stop at nothing to get Trump, and that makes me nervous. Sure, a lot of people. I understand. Next up, I'm keeping my Trump signs. He's got a big family. Okay. All I have to do is change the date if one of his kids runs for office. Well, that's a good point. That's very economical of you. Is that the right word? Very environmentally minded of you, saving them and not just throwing them out. Next up. Thank you, Frank, for all your common sense commentary. I'm glad the vote is over. I'm hoping it will go Trump's way. Thank you, viewer, very much. And last up on this Election Day edition of Frankly Speaking, thanks for having me on, and I encourage everyone to get out and vote. Thank you. And that was Brian Maggs, who was kind enough to join us a couple times on the program. We had so many candidates on. It's wonderful to catch up with everybody. That's why I like when we hear from viewers saying how much it meant to them when they went to the ballot box, knowing that they were informed and had the information they needed to make an educated choice and an educated option. So I appreciate not just everybody saying that about the show, but everybody who was kind enough, running for office, kind enough to be on the program. Okay. Whew. I think we're just about out of time here. But as I was mentioning, I found that really fascinating. They're struggling to, in the media world, especially biased outlets like the New York Times, they don't know if they were politically active enough. Think about that. As they've already admitted, nothing's off limits to bring down Trump. And it's not if they're never concerned about, did we alienate, just like on CNN, did we alienate viewers or did we alienate readers? They're not. Did they push a political agenda strong enough? And now they're saying the left's criticism is you're not being direct enough about what Trump's saying and doing. That's been very loud in recent weeks. We wanted to ask you more directly, does that criticism count for you and how you interpret criticism of the New York Times when it is useful? Enough about that. Enough about the New York Times. Last minute waves. We are out of time. Speaking of the New York Times, did you see the hundreds of New York Times staffers are on strike right before Election Day? That could be interesting for their coverage. All right, here's a comment. Last comment from a viewer before we go. Frank, wonder since you are very involved with the community, my hat's off to you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Do you think you could arrange a group therapy session for your viewers should it be necessary? Yeah, we could figure out something, but I'm not going to think that way. It's too early. Everybody have a great Election Day. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning. We'll have as much information as we possibly can for you, and get out and vote. Polls close at 9 o'clock here in New York, and to our Pennsylvania friends who the magnifying glass is on, your polls close at 8. So have a great Election Day, folks, and we will be back tomorrow morning with Frankly Speaking only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, good luck, get some sleep tonight, and we'll be with you at 6 a.m. I look forward to it already.